There are times where you worry about that kind of stuff. You can't completely switch off. What am I adding here? What should I be doing? What should I be working on?
This is the Education Business Podcast for all founders and business owners in the education sector. This podcast is for you if you have an education business or you're thinking about starting one. That could be tutoring, publishing, holiday clubs. It really doesn't matter. You're in business and you're also in education. But most of all, you're focused on improving outcomes for children in the way you know best, through your business. I'm Claire Riley, co-founder of educational resources website Classroom Secrets, and I'll be sharing how to make your education business bigger, better, and have more impact through my own experiences and also the conversations I have with other founders and business owners in education. The Education Business Podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets, helping you to support your children's learning. Ed, welcome to the Education Business Podcast. You must be the most frequent guest. And I did have somebody ask recently if you could be on the podcast again. So I thought I'll get you on the podcast and just have a bit of a similar conversation, I guess, to other founders that I'm interviewing on a regular basis. So you obviously founded the company Classroom Secrets with me, and you didn't have an education background. So what did your career look like then? How did you actually get into education business in the first place?
Hi, Claire. Really good to be back, and lovely to hear that people do want to hear from me again. So that's great, and I'll try and do it justice. So you're right. I didn't have an education background. Actually, I was working in an IT role for a large not-for-profit organisation. What that did, though, with working in an IT role like that, it gave me information and experience across a business setting, ultimately, which, from an IT perspective, which allowed me to understand what solutions, what technology were needed and were good to support businesses and the business growth. So that's how really my role evolved in Classroom Secrets. Because ultimately it all started with, if you recall, you saying to me, I've got this idea, can you build me a website? So that was the starting point for me. And, that's often nowadays the first place that we go with, especially in online businesses, your website. But with that comes other challenges along the way. So when we started to see that growth, we ended up hitting things like not just about the website. There was a time where suddenly we had a school contact us saying, would like a school subscription. It wasn't on our radar, wasn't something we'd thought about initially. But of course, we're going to sell that to a school if they come asking. But then it's like, well, how do we invoice them? And short of the process of invoicing is that process needs to be supported by technology. My experience was able to kind of help with what technology do we need to use to do that, what facilitates that process, what do we automate on that, and all that kind of stuff. So really my IT background helped me get into the world of business and specifically education business, because then I'm able to see, well, understanding what's needed within an education business from a technology perspective really brought me into that world, because you've got to understand the customer ultimately and what's needed. So that was really helpful in doing that.
Talk me through your career though, because I had quite a lot of jobs when I was at university. That was really helpful to me, different kinds of jobs, mainly in retail. And you were obviously the same. You had a job when you were at university. But then I went into teaching and that's all I knew after that point. Whereas you were in the same organization, but you had a number of different jobs. And I think, that is a very entrepreneurial thing. You did a lot of sidestepping. So talk us through that, because I think that does feed in, doesn't it, to the journey that you've been on?
Okay, you asked for it. So my journey, after leaving uni, kind of left in a position of, what do I do next? I think a lot of people probably think that sometimes, you end up doing a degree that might not be a vocational degree. So sometimes you can be left in this world, do you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do next. So for me, I did biomedical science at uni, and I kind of realised that really wasn't a field that I wanted to be in. I didn't feel like I wanted to be stuck in a lab day in, day out. looking down microscopes and things, as interesting and as valuable as that is, I just didn't feel like it suited me. So I really wanted a job where, I think at that point, where I was working with people. So I went and found a job in a care line, essentially. So, anybody who's sort of listened to Peter Kay with his nan and she's got the red cordable, I was at the end of that red cord, or the pendant that's round the neck. So I worked there. It was a 24-hour operation. I did shift work, and I started there on the phone, did my training. And then relatively quickly, I slotted into that quite well. I enjoyed it, working with people. But I quite quickly then moved into sort of a team leader type position, where you would sort of run the shift, almost like a shift leader position, which, was great as well, because it gave me experience sort of managing people and managing dynamic scenarios, and often high pressure situations, because ultimately you were dealing with people in their time of need, in some situations where they needed urgent support and help. So that was a pressurized environment to work in. And after that, after a couple of years doing that, opportunities arose. The business around me was evolving and changing, as all businesses do. And an opportunity to go and move into a new department as a team leader in their new contact centre, where they had implemented new processes, new procedures, new telephone number for customers, and interestingly, new systems as well. So I had an opportunity to work with a CRM system at that point and help develop that CRM system to fit the need of the business to serve the customers. That was really interesting, exciting. Then over time, that process evolved, and actually some of the other departments within the wider areas of business, sort of finance and a lettings department, all kind of came into one, and teams sort of multi-skilled and things like that. So, I ended up in a position where I was working in as a sort of team manager sort of type role in the area, but with a focus on reporting and supporting the sort of technology elements for the much bigger contact center at that point, serving lots and lots of customers, thousands of customers over the country. So again, it was great for me to be able to get into all sorts of different systems and data and things like that, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed building reports and being involved in the performance of the overall contact center and the systems that supported it. And again, there were times that was high pressure as well, where the phone lines would go down, for example, and that would be on me. I'd be the person who would be liaising with the IT department and working on that. And that over time led on to other things. I built connections within the IT department, and I was given a fantastic opportunity to work on a project where we were renewing our voice and data contract, it was called. So essentially the provider of the Wi-Fi, the network, and the phone systems across the whole business. And this included all of the sites that were actually serving the customers directly, care homes, sheltered housing accommodation, etc. It was a big project working with a big service provider, and it gave me the opportunity to really get more into the IT side of things and the systems and processes around that. And I really basically worked very closely on the voice systems, the telephone systems of the contact centre, but also wider than that into some of the care homes and the sheltered housing sites as well, which is a really great project to be involved in. And alongside that, I actually also got involved in a consolidation of 2 office sites into one bigger site, the whole fit out of the office and the technology that supports that as well. And they also moved the London office into a new site as well. So I really got a lot of exposure across that, which led me to a position where I was actually found myself in a position of the opportunity came up to be an IT solutions architect, which I moved into, which was really great for me, because that was a great hybrid with understanding the business and the needs of the business and finding the correct solutions to support the business processes. So, understanding the detail of what people need to do their jobs and finding a matching system to do that for them, and implementation of that system as well. So really great broad role that I was involved in. And that was, a role that I was in for a number of years, alongside starting to build Classroom Secrets with you, Claire, as well. And lots of that experience transitioned over into Classroom Secrets, and ultimately dropped that to part-time, didn't I, if you remember, which was tough and didn't really work for me, didn't really work for the business I was working for, probably didn't really work for Classroom Secrets. So we made a decision at a certain point where we actually got to the position of, actually, I come on board full-time. And then I suppose that's where the real journey for me starts, with Classroom Secrets.
Yeah, you really did gain a lot of experience when you were at Anchor. And you know that one of the questions I ask you a lot is, I want to do so and so, so and so, and so and so. What will do that for me? And so, really, part of your role still is to be a solutions architect, sometimes just at home and obviously sometimes in the company as well. When you did make that transition and you started sort of being officially an employee, shall we say, of Classroom Secrets and that being your main place of work, what was the shock to the system? What was the most difficult thing to overcome?
So I'd say the most difficult thing to overcome in a transition was probably going from a relatively structured role, an environment where I guess I was clear on the things I had to do. Maybe there'd be a set schedule every week. There'd be things I was working on within the confines of that role and that job description. And then maybe that's a good way of putting it. I think back then when I first joined, did I have a job description? Did I have clarity around the boundaries of what my role was? No, it was very much fluid. I think fluid's a good word there. I think it was very much fluid. But I also think that as a business owner, life can be fluid anyway. Often you're drifting in and out of things. You're having to put things down because something urgent comes up. And I think that was probably the most difficult thing I found was, what am I doing? What should I be doing? What should I be working on? How can I best use my skills and experience to do the right thing and the best thing for the business to help it grow? So I think that was probably the hardest thing around getting that clarity of roles. And I think that probably comes from and is connected to the whole scenario of, well, actually, I'm not a teacher. I wasn't a teacher. So often a lot of the vision and the drive and the focus would be around the teaching bit. So some of the conversations that were happening around the kitchen table or when we moved to the office and things were very much around what we're going to create in terms of resources and the conversation about that, which I felt maybe I couldn't add the value to. I could sit and observe and I could learn and I could maybe add inputs at certain points, but certainly not from a teaching perspective. So I think that probably was the hardest thing. Where's my value? How do I add value? And, yes, I was able to use my skills to put systems and processes in place, but was the clarity and structure around that? No. So I think that was probably the hardest thing. I'm sort of sat there. And I think I would say the second thing as well, sort of connected to that, is when you're working for somebody else in an office, I'd get up and I'd get ready and I would go to the office, travel to work, and sit down, I would do my day at work and then I come home. Whereas suddenly I'm my own boss and I can do the hours that suit. And maybe I don't need to be there at 9:00. Maybe I can work a little bit more flexibly. And I think that was probably the other thing there around, do I need to be sat in that office between 9 and 5? And I think at first I sort of tried to do that. And I think that necessarily, I was trying to almost apply traditional structure to my day, if you like, to what at that point was not a traditional way of operating in a business, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So I think that would be the sort of the other thing that I found difficult as well.
So what's different in how you work now then? How did you make that transition over time to not having as much clarity over what you would do to where you are now, where I think you probably do have quite a lot of clarity on what you're working on, because now obviously you're the CEO at Classroom Secrets. What did that transition look like? And how would you describe the way you interact with the business now and operate your time?
So what's different now? Okay, well, I mean, specifically at the moment in current times, what's different is the plan. We have a clear plan. We have a clear 5-year plan that we then break down into 90-day cycles. So everybody knows what they need to be working on in terms of growing the business and moving forward. So I think that's one big thing that makes a big difference is having that clear plan. And I also think previous to that, maybe we didn't have necessarily such a clear plan. We had plans, we had things we were working on. We had more clarity of roles within the business. So everybody kind of had a clearer idea of what it is their role was and the boundaries within that and the structure. So, we brought roles into the business, but, inevitably as you grow, you have to bring in structure around that. You have to bring in other roles into the business that will manage people, will, do other things like that. So, and that was helpful. Whereas you end up as a founder being more focused on the things that move the needle for the business growing it and less on things like managing people, because you've got structure in place. You have people in the business whose job it is to do that kind of thing. So, that's really helpful. as well as having that plan. So I think it's twofold, really. I think it's, having the structure and the people in place to do the other things, and also having the clear overarching plan as a wider business broken down into actionable steps every quarter is the other bit that really helps. So you know where you're going, you know what you need to be focusing on, and you can move the needle forward, really. So I think that's what I would say around what's different and how that's changed over time. And it's always that evolution, and it's never perfect. There's always more you could do, of course, but I think we're in a much stronger position as we've evolved over time, and we've put that structure in place and those plans in place.
So the business has changed and you've got more of a plan, and that helps you know what it is you should be focused on, but not only you, everybody else. But what about personally? Like you mentioned that you first joined the business and you felt like you had to work 9 to 5 and be in the office. How has that changed? How have you evolved that to be something that works for you as a founder rather than an employee?
Okay, so personally, and again, it's for me, it's sort of linked to the previous response in many ways, in terms of having the people and the structures in place means that, I don't need to be there during core business hours to reply to customer queries or to, make sure the website's running smooth. People are doing that now for me and for us. So I think that then gives you that opportunity to step back and be really flexible. So, for example, I'm able to do the school run, and, Claire and I, we share that. And we have the ability to disappear at, 2:45 to drive to school to pick the kids up and not have to rush back to necessarily do any work. And I think, that ultimate flexibility that being a founder gives me is fantastic. And it gives me the time to spend time with my children and my family, and do things that being in a sort of Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job would be harder. I think it gives me the opportunity to take off half terms and the holidays where the kids are off again, to be able to spend time with them and, go on holiday or go out places with them, to give them the experiences that we all want to give our kids. And I think that's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant that we've been able to build to this point of time freedom in many ways. And I think, it's not always, let's be real and honest about it, it's not always that I can completely switch off from work. There'll be times when I need to bob onto Teams to check a message to make sure something's happening, or sign something off, or, be available for the team when they need me to support them. So there's still that element. You can't completely switch off. I don't think you ever 100% do with being a business owner. I think, you just can't. But where we've built to, and having those people and structures in place and the plans, means I know I can go on holiday for a couple of weeks. And I did recently, this year, I was able to go away for 2 weeks, completely log out of Teams. And yeah, I let, my senior leaders had my WhatsApp number. We had a WhatsApp group, and it was, come there, put anything urgent you really, really need me for in there, but otherwise don't bother me. And you know what? I got back after my holiday and they hadn't put any messages in there, which is a fantastic place to be. And the wheels hadn't fallen off. So, we've built to that, and we've worked hard to get that, to make sure we've got the right people in place and the right structures in place. So it's really satisfying to be able to do that. And I know that if I need to take a day off because, I don't know, one of the kids is ill off school, or a family member needs some help, or something like that, or even we need to go and do some Christmas shopping because we're preparing for the upcoming Christmas holidays and things. And I think, I've got the ability to do that. And the freedom to structure my day, my week, how I want to structure it, but still making sure that I'm doing what I need to do in terms of keeping my things going and keeping the plan moving forward and supporting the team. So I think, personally, I think it's been fantastic to get to the position of time freedom. I think that's quite a nice way to explain it. That means that I can flex my time and work when I want, and, be there for my kids and be there to do the school and the things. So yeah, really good.
Do you teach children as part of your business offering? Have you considered using resources from Classroom Secrets? At Classroom Secrets, we're always adding new resources for a range of subjects, and we're keen to hear your suggestions for resources too. We know that you didn't go into business to work more hours than you did in the classroom, You went into business to give you freedom. Let us help with that. Visit classroomsecrets.co.uk to sign up. I think it's probably fair to say, though, that at first that potential of flexibility was probably quite uncomfortable for you. And it's taken a while to maybe embrace it, perhaps just because of like the norms we can have in society and the expectations that we think that people have of us. Flipping back to something that you said earlier about us all sat round the kitchen table and talking about the next resources we would make, and it being very focused on education. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with being in an education business where most people around you in the team, like probably 98% or something, have been teachers or worked in school and you haven't? How do you deal with that, knowing that your business is in education, but you don't have that background?
Okay, so how do I deal with the fact that I've not worked in education? I'm kind of surrounded by most people in our business that have. Well, really, I think it's about knowing my worth and knowing my value within the business, because I know there are elements of what I know, my experience, my knowledge, etc., my skills that other people in the business don't have. So, and I don't say that in a bragging way, but it's just people take different paths, people have different sets of experience and different skills and things. And I feel like that, I'm confident in that, and I found my place with that. And that can take time, because when the topic of conversation is all about, well, which resource we're going to make next, how are we going to make that resource better, what does the national curriculum say about that, and so on and so forth, which is, not areas that I'm familiar with or have a history in, you can feel a bit like, what am I adding here? But when it comes to, stepping into bigger things as the business grows, and technology and strategy and businessy things, then I've got a lot of experience in working in a large organization that I've seen the mechanics of, and I've got lots of experience in various different areas of that, not just the technology side. So, and obviously I've grown and learned as I've grown a business. So there's an element of my self-confidence has grown in that area. I know when to shut up and listen to the experts. I know when to do the sniff test, if you like. So you learn with life and experience, don't you? When something doesn't pass the so-called sniff test, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't smell right, but your gut tells you something's not right. So you can pose challenges and ask for information, data, and evidence. And I think that's, although I might not be an expert in the curriculum, I'd like to think now that if somebody came along and came with something that was maybe not aligned to that, I'd be able to at least identify that, challenge that, probe more from my experience that I've gained in that area over the course of growing Classroom Secrets. But I won't profess to be an expert in that area either. And that goes across other areas of the business as well. As a business owner, often you're touching lots of things and learning lots of things. Are you an expert in all those things? No, you're not. You'll have a set of core expertise and experience and knowledge, but then you'll have a set of other knowledge and experience that allows you to hold your own, but not necessarily be an expert in that area. But that is also why, as a business owner, you look to bring people in who are the experts in those areas, who can work with you, can, make sure you're strong in those areas that maybe you need to grow the business. But you've also got to learn that it's still your business, it's still your vision, it's still your direction you want to take it, and your plan ultimately that you're executing. And you've got to be mindful of not allowing some of those stronger expert voices taking you down the wrong path because of their own views and their own desires. And I don't say that in a negative way. Ultimately, we look for people who want to join our business and join our vision and join our cause, if you like, that want to come on that journey with us. Now, we look for alignment there. And just because maybe some instances people don't necessarily align with that, that doesn't mean to say that that's a bad thing. It just means to say that maybe, there's a different view on things that can offer a balance. In some instances, the alignment's not there, and people over time come to see that and learn that, and actually decide, they want to go and do something else. And that's all okay as well, because sometimes people join our journey for a short time, some people join it for a long time, and there's people in between, and that's okay. But as a business owner, you have to stay strong to your own plan and values. So I think I've answered that question. I've probably gone off on a bit of a tangent, but ultimately, I think it's about growing in self-confidence in knowing my worth and my skills and experience as applicable to business growth as those people with a education background who are really kind of influencing and growing the core product offering.
I think you've raised some really great points there. I mean, I've talked before about that being one of our biggest lessons about knowing who you are, being confident in yourself, knowing your value, having a plan, and making sure that you ensure that people stick to that plan rather than take you off in a different direction. And, it's a lesson that we've both learned, isn't it? Because, we face the same experiences in business. It has been a tough ride, as it's a tough ride for everybody. We've certainly learned a lot along the way. Question: have there ever been any times where you have worried that the business will fail?
Great question. I think the honest answer has to be yes. There are times where you worry about that kind of stuff, especially when you get existential challenges that come along, and they can vary and it can depend on your stage of your business and kind of your confidence levels and things like that. But, whereas in the earlier days, a particular thing could happen that might feel massive. The first time you come across that challenge, it can feel absolutely massive, scary, terrifying, all those types of words that, that kind of come up when you hit those challenges. But you go through them, you work out a plan, and you follow the plan. And ultimately, you go through that process. And then you might look back on that in years down the line and think, you know what, actually, that was a great lesson. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I'm still here. The business is still here. We've grown the business since that point. We're still moving forward. It's almost like levels of challenges, if you like. And that as you go through business, if we got a challenge now that we had 5-7 years ago, it'd be very different because we've been through that, we've gained experience. And that's not to say that tomorrow a massive challenge might not come. It might. And, there are challenges economically at the moment, as we all feel and are well aware of. And you kind of think, what does the future hold? And you can worry about that, or you can think about, well, how do I address and challenge the issues that I can see in front of me today to keep moving forward? And it goes back to the old story about Blockbuster, doesn't it? If you keep doing the same thing and don't change and almost ignore the challenges, then the outcome might not be great. So it's about keeping moving forward. It's about doing new things. It's about constantly looking and seeking for how you can differentiate yourself from competitors or how you can do something different to mitigate a particular challenge. And I think we have come up across some big challenges as we've grown and developed Classroom Secrets. We have. We're still here. And I think, you've got to have that inner belief that you can do it. And we've got the skills and we've got the knowledge and experience that means we can just adapt and move forward. And I think that's the key to it all. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that as a business owner, you're not going to have challenges. It's going to be all plain sailing. It's not. And you look at some of the biggest, most successful companies or entrepreneurs in the world, they've had challenges. They've had things that fail. And I think, we all know, don't we, that failing is part of the learning process. So some stuff you do isn't going to work, but that's okay. And I say this to my team. I say this to, the business owners that I talk to and things like that. It's part of the process. And, you'll try things and they won't work. That's okay. We learn from it, we move on, we do something different. And we talk a lot about small experiments in Classroom Secrets. And I get everyone in the business to think around, how can I do a small experiment that tests something to see whether it works or not? And if it doesn't work, we learn and we move on, we do something else. If it does work, we do more of it and we scale it up. And I think that's just a great way to think about things. As a challenge comes along, well, what can I do? How can I break that down? What small experiments can I do that will address that, And I think I would say as well is the other thing is, the other massive thing for us, when I look back at one major challenge to us historically that we had, and it was big, it felt scary at the time. We were scared. We really were. And I think what we did was we sought advice from a trusted business owner that we knew, somebody with lots and lots of experience over many years. And we got advice from him. And I think that's the thing, it's that whenever you hit a challenge, you're not alone. There are people that are around to support you if you look hard enough. It might be people in your own family, it might be people in your own network. If you sit there and think about it, you will have people that can absolutely come along and get behind you and give you the advice and the support to get through the challenge. So, I think, so in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is, yes, I have worried about the business at times, and we have had some big challenges, but we've come through them. And I have every confidence that future challenges, we will come through as well. And it's just all part of the process.
You definitely have to learn a lot, don't you? And I think, we wouldn't be normal people if we'd not been scared of some of the things that we faced. I mean, I tend to be scared of most things that I do for the first time. I think that's the thing. Like, you're scared the first time you do a restructure, the first time you make somebody redundant, the first time you get a legal letter. These are all normal things in business. But the first time it happens, you feel panicked. And I suppose what's been good for us is at least we've gone through that together, and we're always learning through the process of new things that we're doing right now as well. But once you have done it, if you have to do that thing again, because it doesn't just happen once, then it's obviously a lot easier to deal with. I feel like we've covered quite a lot of ground fairly quickly, actually. And so I think it's time to bring the episode to a close. So I asked this question to most founders that I interview on the podcast. What do you think that we've not talked about that we should have talked about that would be helpful for education business owners to know?
Great question. And wow, a tricky question, I think, because I think we have covered an awful lot. We really have. And it touched on lots of things, I suppose, and we could delve deeper into lots of those if we had more time, I'm sure. But one of the things that maybe I would say is that, like you said, we're fortunate to have each other on this journey, being, not only co-founders of Classroom Secrets, but also being married. We've really lived this journey together. But I think that I see that there are people that are on their own, as founders, and I can, in the sector and just, wider business, but in the education business sector. And I think it can be lonely. And I think we feel, even as the two of us, we feel lonely sometimes. So what I would say is, try and find your people. And when I say that, I mean, try to find somebody who really understands your situation at where you are in your journey as an entrepreneur with your business, and maybe the scale and size of your business. Go and seek these people out if you can, because they can, somebody who's going to understand that journey and be able to share that journey with you. Because, many of you listening will be on your own with your business. It's your baby, it's your idea. You've grown it, you're working hard on it day in and day out. And many of you obviously will be, maybe married or have partners and strong family connections around you. And I'm sure, they really support you with that. But do they really 100% understand what it's like to be in your shoes? No, probably not. As much as many of them will try to support you and understand. So find that person who's kind of walking the similar walk to you. Obviously, that's easier said than done. And it's something that, Claire and I do struggle with as well. In all honesty, it's not easy to do, but try and find those people. Go to events and go to networking if you can. Just try them out and see what you can find. Build those connections. You know what? If you don't find somebody who's necessarily in your situation, you're probably going to find other valuable connections through those processes as well. Consider joining trade bodies and things like that, like BISA, for example, because that might open up avenues for you to meet people that are in similar boats to you as well. And try and find someone to share that journey, I think, is a thing. Because I think, as I said earlier, having those trusted people who you can turn to in times of challenge, just for advice or just somebody to listen, is really important. So I think I would that would be the thing that I would say. This journey can be lonely and can be difficult. So, and I think, hopefully Claire would agree with this, listening to this now, if you're resonating with that, then reach out. If you need some advice or you just need somebody to listen, then, Claire and I are very open to helping people. We want to help people. That's the whole point of this podcast as well, sharing our knowledge, our advice that we've learned so far. And we don't know everything, right? But we're still learning. But everyone's at different stages of that journey. So wherever we can connect with people, and learn from them and support them and impart our knowledge and experience and skills, then we're more than happy to do that, because it is tough, and there can be challenges, as we've covered, but you don't have to face those alone. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful to you and a good answer to your question there.
Yes, I think you passed the good answer test. It is a struggle, and you've shared that we have struggled with that and do struggle with that. And I think I meet a lot of founders who are maybe a few years in and they haven't done any networking at all because they don't think that they need to, or they didn't think they needed to. And that's us as well. We didn't start networking until later on in our business when we'd already grown a team. And we found that really hard because then most people we would meet were not in the same boat as us. And I think it can actually be easier to network when you're earlier on in your business because it's easier to find people who are at the same level. And you can have business friends who are at all sorts of different stages of business, and that's fine. But it's very difficult to find people who understand the challenges you're going through when, say, for example, they don't have a team, or they've got a team of 3 and you've got a team of 30. So it's that as well, isn't it? Finding people who match your experiences. And another thing that we've had in this vein as well is finding people who have the same. It's not that everybody you meet has to have the same values as you, but perhaps, being a husband and wife team is quite a unique thing. Also having children in primary school, also working in a way that's really flexible for them. Like, people have different viewpoints around that and will do different things. And so it can be very difficult for somebody who does stick to the traditional 9 till 5. Maybe one of them in the relationship is going out to a place of work, so there's no working from home involved. They don't take time off for school holidays. Then it's a very different thing, and then you're still not in the same situation, even though you might have a similar sized team. And it's all these things, but I think it is hard to find people who do understand the unique challenges, because most people are on the other side of your business challenges from an employee perspective or an outside perspective, and not on the inside, and not really understanding what it's like to go through that. So you've brought to the surface one of the things that I think we will talk about that maybe many founders that I interview might not even realize is a thing at this point, but could become a thing in the future. So I think that's really, really helpful. Ed, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me on the podcast. It's the fastest one I've ever recorded asynchronously because we live in the same house. And when I finished, I told Ed, and when Ed had finished, he told me. But yeah, thank you for giving your insights. I know that they'll be really useful for people. And perhaps I'll see you around sometime. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets. To find more resources to grow your business, visit classroomsecrets.co.uk.